Hi everyone, Kay Berkner here today with Dr. Tom Phelan, author and creator of 123 Magic and the author of the Manager Mom Epidemic. Dr. Phelan, welcome.
Good morning, Kay. How are you this morning?
I'm doing very well, and you?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good. So today we are going to be talking about a topic that can be a challenge for a lot of people, and that is teenagers. So we have jokingly called this, so you've got a teenager, now what? But it can really feel like that for a lot of parents. You've had this this charming, talkative child who wants to engage with you about everything, and all of a sudden it seems as though a switch has flipped. So let's start by talking about what is going on inside the teen brain.
Well, you are right about the switch. I had one mom tell me, she said, my daughter went to high school for the first day of freshman year and never returned. I got this thing back that wouldn't talk to me. And what's going on in the teen brain is what's gone on for quite a few years, probably not forever, way back when, but they're separating from you, and they're feeling their oats. They're more attached to peers. They feel like they don't need you anymore. They want to run their own life. And this often comes across in what I call the adolescent snub, where they're just kind of almost rude and sort of unpleasant and don't like you asking questions and prying into their affairs.
And so that can be really hard if you're used to having a chatty child who now suddenly seems to not want to share anything with you. What can parents do to connect with their teenagers in a way that doesn't make their teenager feel as though mom or dad is still trying to control them?
Well, there are two things really. One has to do with inside. I talk in the book about managing your reactions to your teen. And when the teen snubs you, just like you said, your feelings are likely to be hurt. And if you come across that way, you're going to be in trouble. That's because it's a normal thing. You don't want to take it personally. And also, you don't want to think, a lot of parents that I've seen think, well, I must have done something wrong to turn them off. You didn't do anything wrong. So then what do? There's a bunch of things you can do, but two of the most important are you need to be a good listener. This is not the time to be. Teens like to shock you. That's why they put the baseball caps on backwards. It's say, I'm going to be different from you. I'm doing things my own way. And what you want to do is don't try and shape them so much anymore. Listen to them. Well, that blue hair is really interesting. How'd you come up with blue? And that kind of thing. The other thing is you want to continue to have fun with them if you can. And it's harder to have fun with teenagers, but a movie and food is often a good alternative. But just not trying to inquire about their life and diagnose them, just have fun with them. And that can help an awful lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I distinctly recall at some point, probably very dramatically shouting at my parents, "You have to let me make my own mistakes." And I feel like the further that we get from teenagerhood, the more the memory of like just how life altering everything felt at that time, because we have sort of the lens of many years of adulting experience at this point.
Yeah, but that's a good point, because I think we parents often forget what it was like to be a teenager. I mean, and maybe you didn't want to sit down at the dinner table with your family all the time. And you forget, well, that's what your teen's going through now. Well, let them go through that and, remember what it was like for you.
Absolutely. So obviously in pushing back, in looking for more independence, teenagers are going to want to be less supervised. And yet we're still their parents. We're still responsible for them, particularly younger teenagers, right? How do you handle teen misbehavior, right? Like as the kids are younger, in the book, we talk about counting as dealing with sort of obnoxious behaviors and rest periods and that type of thing. But I can't imagine that the same thing would go over quite as well with a teenager. So what do you do about teen misbehavior?
Yeah, first of all, you're going to define it. And there are two ways to define it. One is you're going to have house rules. So they're going to be hours, okay? And at times at which you can't come back late. There are going to be rules about going out. There may be rules about contributing to the household and things like that. The other thing you're going to do is identify what I call the MBAs, which is minor but aggravating behavior that can drive you crazy, that your teen does, but that isn't a sign of emotional disturbance and doesn't need intervention. One good example of that is dress. I often tell parents, anything the school let them in the door with, fine. Another is musical preferences. You call this stuff music? That's what some parents say. Well, I don't know if it's music or not, but musical preferences are also MBAs, sometimes eating habits and things like that. So you're going to have household rules. If there's misbehavior, you're going to discuss it. There are going to be consequences for coming in late, that kind of thing. But you're also going to identify things that may irritate you, but you're going to keep quiet about.
Got it. So can we talk about a couple of specific things? For instance, say that you hear from your teen's school. Well, nowadays there's a lot of schools have sort of an online portal where you can log in and check how your teenager is doing in their various classes, if they have missing assignments, what their grades are. Say you log into that portal to check on your teenager's progress, and it turns out they are missing 3 assignments and failing a class. Like, what do you do in that situation? How do you address that in a way that is effective, but doesn't make them mad and have them slamming the door in your face?
Well, the first thing you don't do is have a tantrum yourself and yell at them, this is unacceptable, and so on. The thing you want to do, if this is different behavior for your teen, you want to sit down with them and say, I got this information here. I want you to explain to me, help me with this. What's going on? How is this happening? How can we deal with it? How can we get some information about it? And so on. So you're going to do tactic we call negotiation. Instead of bombing them with something, you're going to talk to them and do a joint problem solving effort. If it's not new behavior and this kid's been flunking for a long period of time, then it's time to maybe get professional assistance to do an evaluation. I talked to one mom once and I said, how long have your son's grades been bad? He was in 8th grade. And she said, well, I've been concerned about him ever since 1st grade. I said, well, I think it's a little late here. We need to get going and do something and find out why these grades are bad.
Got it. And how about things like, you mentioned having house rules. What if those house rules are violated? What if you have a teenager who's consistently coming in after curfew, or, maybe one of the house rules is around eating habits and they, have to consume X number of vegetables before they can take that bag of Sour Patch Kids up to their room or whatever? What types of things can you do in the situation of a violation of the rules that you've set in your own home?
Yeah, you're going to do a combination of negotiation plus consequences. So for rules, there still can be consequences. It could be a grounding, it could be a fine if they have allowance, it could be part of that, it could be restriction of electronic activities. These are harder to enforce, some of them, not so much allowance, but restriction of electronic activities can be with teens. So you want to pick a consequence that you can have some control over. But one of what I said before is really important. If you impose consequences while you are having a temper tantrum, you might as well not have said anything. So it's a tough thing to do, but you say, I hate to do this. There's the old phrase, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. I don't know if anybody really ever meant that, but you can say it.
Certainly no teenager ever believed it.
But anyway, you say, I don't like to have to do this, but this is what we're going to have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing that we wanted to talk about today briefly is actually social anxiety. And I think that this is something that can affect teenagers. I think it's something that we may well be seeing more right now as kids missed a bunch of school, right? They missed a bunch of in-person school time and interaction with their peers. And I think that can have an impact on sort of where they are in terms of their comfort level with interacting face to face. So, Dr. Phelan, could you start by telling us define for us, what is social anxiety?
Yeah, well, everybody has a little bit of shyness in them, I think, a little bit of discomfort in social situation, because we want to do the right thing. We don't want people to look at us like we're goofy and all that. When that really becomes extreme to where people avoid social situations, or in a social situation they feel a sense of extreme anxiety or panic, now we're talking about something that is not good. And I think you hit on something that is important these days with the restriction in face-to-face school. Now it's coming back some, but also with the screens. People are interacting electronically, and that's not the same as interacting face to face. And so I don't think the kids who are prone to social anxiety are getting the practice that they need. And it's very different talking to somebody or chatting with somebody or on the screen. So I think there's increase in this kind of thing going on now, which is totally widespread, and it's not good. But the social anxiety is really extreme discomfort with other people, and it's very painful for somebody who's going through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like as I have started interacting with friends in person again, with colleagues, business contacts, that type of thing, I feel like frequently we're saying to one another, oh boy, I don't even know how to act around people anymore. Right?
Right.
So
how do you say hello?
exactly. So, if we're experiencing that, certainly I'm sure that kids are as well. It does social anxiety impact children and adults equally? And sort of like what is the relationship there?
Yeah, you can. Well, first of all, it's going to run in families. So if you have a shy kid, there's a good chance that you were shy yourself. And so you have some experience with it, which can be good or bad. You can over-identify with them and screw things up, or you may be more sympathetic in a positive way. But social anxiety in adults is really a high incidence kind of thing. Shyness in kids is pretty common. You see it in the preschoolers and so on. But there's about 15-20% of our kid population, our adult population, they're going to have a real severe form of shyness, which is what we call social anxiety. So it's something you want to deal with it early, because it's a real self-esteem bomber. Social anxiety just whacks self-esteem like crazy, and anybody who experiences that on a regular basis is going to have a real problem thinking highly of themselves.
Yeah, and what relationship does social anxiety have to maybe other anxieties that people might have?
Yeah, usually if you have one, you have more than one. So what that means is not only does it run in family, but anybody who has social anxiety is likely to have something else. They may have some other kind of separation anxiety. They may have a fear of public speaking. They may have performance anxiety. They may have a lot of stuff. So it means your anxiety button in your brain is working too hard, and it gets pressed too much in a lot of different situations. So when you have one, you have more than one. And there's a lot of therapists these days that are working hard on teaching kids how to deal with anxiety and teaching adults how to deal with anxiety. And it's the good news is it's one of the most treatable psychological conditions we have.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Phelan. This has been so helpful. If social anxiety is something that you think you or your child might be dealing with and you'd like to learn a little bit more, Dr. Phelan is going to be doing an 8-minute parenting tip on that next week. That's a free seminar that he'll do. You can register for that online. Additionally, he's going to be doing a full free seminar on teenagers and sort of how to deal with teen behavior, how to connect with your teenager, all of the topics we discussed today and more in a lot more depth with a lot of actionable takeaways there. So head on over to 123magic.com and get signed up for the email newsletter so you get the notification for those events and the sign up links, and we'll also post them on the Facebook page. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.